Hello, this is Let's Talk About Myths, baby, and I am your host, Liv. Now today I'm here with an episode that is, if I'm honest, kind of a mix of everything. As you all know, I have been utterly swamped by writing my children's retelling / edition of the Odyssey. And so I've been kind of finding different ways of putting out episodes for you guys. You will have seen last week we did some re-airings. Honestly, Michaela was in town too, which was delightful, but then meant that I really didn't have the ability to both deliver my big chunk of the Odyssey and work out fresh episodes. So, I mean, I'm really grateful that I have like 700 episodes that, I mean, having that many means that so often I can replay something from a little while back and it is still going to reach all of these new listeners because, spoilers, the conversation episodes particularly are some of the most interesting and fascinating things, and I release so many of them that it's easy to get lost as well. So I hope you enjoyed those re-airs from last week. This week we have a little bit more of that, but mostly because originally I had this planned for last week, but then I just completely forgot how time works. And I wanted to do like a little bit of a back to school re-airing like push. And so this whole week we're actually going to be dropping re-aired episodes in addition to this one, which is new. That's right, this one's new. But the rest of the week, the whole week, I'm going to be re-airing some past conversation episodes that just ones that I think might be particularly helpful for some people who might be going back to school, either, with these topics in mind or just going back to school and wanting to dip your toe into learning once again, or frankly, just people like myself who have been out of school forever, but also just really love to learn stuff like all the time. And so I'm going to be replaying some fun episodes that I just realized I wanted to share with you all again. Some are more recent than others. Some are a few years old, but all of them are ones where I felt like we covered like a really interesting and kind of unique topic about the ancient world, and which I think you'd like to hear again. So those will be coming. And today I'm going to answer a few listener questions, some silly ones, some interesting ones, whatever I really feel like, honestly, because that's how this show works. But most importantly, today I also have things to tell you about the inner workings of the show, both internally and externally. Things that have been in the works for like ever, like in some cases almost a year, and are finally coming to fruition at both really good times and also like the living worst. We'll get to it. Trade wars and whatever. And so today I'm also going to be sharing with you guys some really exciting news, including information on next year's group trips. That's right. It'll probably be and so much more. And that is my very poor introduction to make sure that you keep listening, because I have a lot of interesting and important things to share, from group trips to finally merch, mostly, to answers to silly and interesting questions. I don't know. Today we've got it all, I guess. Ariadne's Naxian escape. Answers to your questions, a new group trip, and so much more. Well, before we really get started, here is where I have to warn you that I don't know. Oh my God. Why is North America like this? Okay, so I am recording this on Labor Day, September 1st. It's really the only time that I could record it. But there just happens to be day 3 of the Toronto Air Show going on in the vicinity of my apartment. I'm really nowhere near it, and yet we can't escape it. And late stage imperialist capitalism, is such as it is, which means there is a goddamn war machine flying over my city for funsies right now. Just show and tell with the death machine. Anyway, if you hear the sound of an F-35 making its way through my windows, well, there's nothing I can do. The world is terrible. We're gonna see how it sounds. Okay, on that note, we're going to start with a couple of questions that link really well together and are things that I've been really obsessed with lately, which is clearly getting pushed onto my listeners because you're now asking about it. And so I really want to answer these two. The first one comes from Peacock Pete, who is a name I know very well. There's every once in a while there's these listeners who have these like unique usernames that then stick in my head for like years and years. And Peacock Pete, you're one of them. But we also met in London when I was there, which was so great. And that's how Peacock Pete's question starts. So I'll skip ahead and jump right to the question. But it was lovely to meet you too. Okay. My question is about the muses. Why is it that there doesn't seem to be a muse for visual arts? They all seem to be about poetry, music, and storytelling. I understand that those art forms are profoundly important to the culture of ancient Greece, but so were things like pottery and armor decoration. And that's so true. And okay, it's a really good question. And I have another one that I think I'm going to pull into this because they're really connected. So this next one is from Amanda, who first says some really fun and nice things about me and my work and our connection, and includes the words that they also became part of the Greek myth to Sapphic to leftist alphabet mafia member / witch pipeline. And I just love that. So thank you, Amanda. But the actual question is, in a few episodes, you've mentioned crafting and its importance. I think most recently was talking about women and their importance in spinning, weaving, because that's how clothes are made. Aside from the obvious, Hephaestus forge, Athena, Penelope weaving, Dionysus winemaking, the three fates and their weaving, can you provide a few more examples of where crafting has featured notably in myth? I ask because most of the time when I'm listening to the podcast, I'm also knitting. ADHD club member too. Thank you, Amanda. Okay. So I think this is really interesting. These two questions are connected obviously by this specific part of crafting in mythology and the ancient world, this idea of crafting. And so first, when it comes to the muses, I think that's a really interesting question, and it's something I haven't had a chance to look for any research on this. But like so many things, if there was a guest who might want to talk about it, oh my god, I would be so thrilled, because I don't necessarily know enough about. So here's the thing about the muses, I guess, is where we have to start this. You know, the muses are in themselves like a very, not like disparate group of deities, but they're really kind of unofficial, I guess is a better way to put them. Like, for instance, in some cases there are only 3 muses, in others there are the more famous 9. I believe it's Hesiod who only has 3, and you know, he is this sort of the oldest source other than Homer that survives, but specifically the oldest source that survives to tell us any kind of like makeup of the divine world, right? Like in Homer, we're just kind of thrown right in and you have to figure it out, whereas Hesiod kind of lays some groundwork. Hesiod only has 3 muses, and so I believe, if I'm not misremembering, the idea of 3 muses is pretty specific to Boeotia, which is sort of the northwest of Athens, the big region where Thebes is the main city. And that's where Hesiod, if he was a real guy, where he was supposed to have been from. And that seems to be this connection to 3 muses. Now, 9 muses is considerably more famous. That's where we get the 9. Let's see if I can name them off the top of my head. You guys are just going to trust me. Okay, we've got Calliope, Clio, Melpomene, Terpsichore. Ooh, that's only 4. That's terrible, Liv. Thalia. Oh, this is not fun for the show. Anyway, okay. I got to 5. But that's where the famous 9 muses comes from. Without the pressure, I gotta come up with more, but I don't want to edit it afterwards. That's where the 9 muses come from. And so I say that just because, like, this idea of a specific number of muses and muses which are explicitly aligned with, like, particular types of quote-unquote arts, that in itself is not necessarily, like, an across the board of the Greek world kind of thing, right? And that's the same thing with the what they're the muses of, right? Of the ones I remembered, you know, Calliope is the muse of epic poetry. Melpomene, I believe, is the muse of, not hymns. Polymnia is the muse of hymns. But you know, there are all these different types. There's a muse of astronomy. There's a muse of epic poetry, erotic poetry, of tragedy, history, things like this. And so I think what's really at play here is, I mean, it's a number of things. It's the fact that the muses were never any kind of, like, canonized, solidified group that definitely represented these very specific things or had these very specific names. Like so much in Greek myth, they are a group of deities that varies quite broadly over time periods and regions and all of these different things, right? And so that is a large part of why we don't have a muse for those types of art. But I think there's also something to be said with just the way that we conceptualize of art now compared to what the ancient Greeks were imagining when they were imagining up these muses, right? Because I think the big difference, and again, like, I would love to find research that looks into, you know, kind of a background on this, because this is just stuff that I've, like, noticed. But the muses that we have, to my understanding, they really represent, oh, there's the F-35. I'll cut some of that out. Honestly, I don't know what planet we're living on that in the middle of my country secretly sending arms to a country committing a genocide and then lying about it to all of our faces over and over and over again. Like, there's something really wild about them also flying a fucking F-35 in for show and tell. As if the overwhelming majority of the world doesn't live in fear of these war machines that we're just flying around for funsies. Anyway, not about this, but I literally can't avoid it. It's been 5 straight days of seeing an F-35 outside my window, and I want to scream into the sun. But my understanding about kind of how the muses as we have them works is that the things they represent are a lot less physical. They're really more intangible. And so I wonder whether we're just really looking at like how different cultures conceptualize what is art. Like, therefore, like what a muse would be helpful with, you know? Because you're right, like, we don't have a muse for these craft arts. And as Amanda said in her question, we also have these really important gods and figures who are associated with what we today would very much call art, being, you know, craftsmanship. But I get this sense that there was just this sort of different understanding, right? Because the muses, as we have them, represent things that are typically oral, or, like, you know, because they weren't developed in a world where people were even, like, reading a poem off of a page, like, that wasn't a thing, right? And so the type of art, like weaving, like Hephaestus with the forge, all of these things are much more tangible, and rather than, you know, these oral storytelling. Like, I think the muses kind of, I don't know, it's an interesting question because I don't have a concrete answer, but, like, that is the big difference between these things that we would absolutely conceptualize as art and the things that the muses represented. Like, like astronomy has a muse, right? But like, yeah, pottery, painting, whatever, these physical arts don't. And I don't have an answer, but it is just generally interesting. And to me, it has to come down to this way of conceptualizing what art is and what muses can be helpful with. But to sort of step away from the muses and get to this other question about like where more of these types of crafts arts would appear, I honestly don't have a lot of examples beyond what you have said here, Amanda. And so I want to remind all of the listeners these ones. So like Hephaestus and his forge. Yes, Hephaestus is a craftsman god, very particularly because of his the craftsmanship in his armor and everything that he makes for the gods and heroes and whatever. And then yeah, Athena has her weaving. She is the goddess of womanly arts, sometimes they say, but she's a craftsperson goddess. I should have said craftsperson for Hephaestus too. Gendered words are the worst. And so we have a lot of those references, but it's not like we don't really have them featuring in, you know, the Odyssey features a lot of weaving in a way that I hadn't really conceptualized when I read it years ago so many times, but which really stood out to me now when I've been working on it for this kids book. There are so many references to weaving, both so from Athena, yes, from Penelope, but also Circe is weaving when we meet her. Calypso is weaving when we meet her. Helen gives Telemachus this like really fancy robe that she also wove. So we have a lot of these references. And then of course, yes, the Fates, like you say, like very famously are the weavers, right? We have one of them who's spinning the thread, one is measuring, and one is cutting it. And so again, we have this association with women specifically, and weaving and these kind of craft arts. And I think this comes back to the muses question. I think that the reason why there aren't like a lot of these things spelled out in the myths like we might imagine them to be, is purely, again, the nature of just like how they conceptualized things as compared to how we conceptualize things. You know, Hephaestus's art, his craftspersonship is regularly featured also, but it's less about him and more about like the hero wearing what he made, right? Like in the Iliad, there's an incredible scene depicting the shield of Achilles, which Hephaestus wrought, and all of his armor. It's this big scene, really drilling in the importance and the skill involved. And the Aeneid then later mirrors that for Aeneas's armor. There is a fragmentary poem that's attributed to Hesiod that's called the Shield of Heracles, which is essentially this big epic poem that tells a bunch of myths, but all inherently connected with what is depicted on the Shield of Heracles. So, you know, we get a lot of a sense of the importance and the overall, like, what the level of detail that could be conveyed on this type of stuff, but it doesn't really feature into the myths more than that. And again, this comes down to, like so many things in mythology, like it's just the practical nature of like what stories are being told in the myths and, you know, what purpose they are serving, and just how that doesn't necessarily connect with us getting these like big, long, detailed stories of these types of arts. Like even Dionysus making wine, like we really only have a myth of him like quote unquote like learning it. I forget what the details are. I know there's something about somebody sleeping with a wife. I've told about it. I think it's probably in the episode I called him Wine Daddy. It's one of my more memorable titles. If you're curious, you can go listen to that one. But we really don't have a lot about that either. It's just that he made wine. You know, that is the overall important point, but like actual instances of it happening are not the type of things that end up in the myths that survive. Okay, and with one question down, we are getting to the group trip. Okay, so this is just, I want to just sort of tell you all a little bit about what's happening with the group trips. This is sort of a weird thing to like explain this way, and I try not to make these episodes too much about this, but I don't have another easy means right now. I've been trying to avoid social media, and my newsletter will be back. This is a little rambling already because if you can tell, I didn't have time to plan it out. I just spent the last 5 hours writing the Odyssey, and so we're just diving right in. But so firstly, you can find more information on my website, mythsbaby.com. As of today, provided things go well from the time that I record this until the time that it releases, I will have a new, very redone, very fresh website. Still at mythsbaby.com. A really good friend of mine has been working on it with her business partner. Their firm is called Be Good Design, and they're doing it all because we're trying this collective thing of people helping other people to make the world a better place. These are instances of women helping other women, and I love them. And they have been working on this website, and that is where you'll be able to find more information about this group trip. And so the group trip that is currently scheduled and which you can now, as of right now, apply to take part in is being put on by a different tour company. So the group trips we've done in the past, I've been working directly with a listener and travel agent who works for a group called Travel Bug. We will very likely, just to be confirmed, but almost certainly be working with them again to do more group trips that are in the same vein as the ones we've already done. The big caveat is that the ones we've already done and the ones that are to be confirmed for the future are considerably more affordable. That is what I've always tried to do. I want to make sure that these trips are affordable. Now, this trip that is official for May of next year and which you can apply to now is less so, I'll be honest. The idea behind this company approached me. They have these pre-existing tours, and they work with people like myself to join in on the tour and go do these like speaking event type of things, these kind of talks about where we are, the history, the mythology, all of it. And in exchange, they pay for my tour, and honestly, I get a little bit of money. So the hope is that by doing one of these tours that is a little bit on the more expensive side compared to the other ones will help us to finance the tours that are more affordable. Because spoilers about the tours we've done in the past, they have not only not made us money, but have cost us a lot of money. And we can't afford to be doing that anymore. Surprise, surprise. Turns out my hatred of capitalism actually means that I very often end up losing money on things, which I need to stop doing because otherwise the podcast won't continue on. So the idea behind this new tour is that it will be a bit more, it is a bit more expensive, honestly, but it is also much more luxury. Like, you're getting a lot for the money. So my idea is kind of to have these two different trips, one being more luxurious, definitely fancier, and the others being a bit simpler, a bit more low-key, but more affordable. I want to have these options for people, and hopefully the people that can afford to go on this fancier trip will help to offset the people who can only afford the less expensive trips. So all to say, please stay tuned. We will be having more information about working with Travelbug again and going on these more affordable tours. Michaela and I are currently hoping to hold those tours next year in either September or October. Climate change is a bitch, and we have learned that June has gotten too hot. Oh my god, too hot. But the trip that is open for applications right now, for deposits right now, is called Ariadne's Escape. I am working with a company called Thalassa Journeys, which, if you can believe it, is a coincidence. Thalassa means sea in Greek. I believe one of the founders of this company are Greek or have maybe Greek Cypriot something roots. And so the company itself has a Greek name, which has thrilled me with an enormous amount of joy. And the trip we are calling Ariadne's Escape, a journey to mythical Greek islands. And I am very excited about it. So I'm going to tell you a bit about where we're going and kind of those details. But if you go to my website, mythsbaby.com, and the URL should be /group trip, all one word. I will link in the episode's description because none of this is fully made on the website as of recording, but it will be. go to mythsbaby.com/group trip or click the link in the episode description. All of this is laid out in a beautiful brochure that I have linked there. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, but you can find out so much more. So not only will I be on the trip, but I will be doing these talks throughout. They're all pre-planned and scheduled through Thalassa. So the other nice thing about this is that I don't have to do any of the planning at all. I just have to tell you guys about it, and then I get to go there, which frankly really works well for me. And so this trip starts in Athens. We're doing a little bit of time in Athens. You kind of have to, obviously, to see the essentials. So the Acropolis, tour of the ancient city, things like that. There is also a trip to Sunyan, which is where the Temple of Poseidon is. And this is where we get this sort of naming and idea behind this trip that I chose. So I made the name Ariadne's Escape because one of these pre-existing tours that I really wanted to do with my listeners already kind of reverse mapped out Theseus's journey, like starting in Athens and it ends in Crete. And so I thought, what's a fun way of making it not about Theseus? Thus, Ariadne's Escape. What it also means is we are going to my favorite places. So many of my favorite places. So we're starting in Athens, like I said, going to Sunyan, which, yes, is where Theseus's dad, Aegeus, threw himself into the sea because he thought his son was dead because his son is just an irresponsible dummy. That is said to be where they then built the Temple of Poseidon at Sunyan. And from Athens, we head to the islands. And this is what makes this tour quite a bit different from the ones that I've been working with the Travel Bug directly, because like I said, those ones are all about fitting in as many things in a cost-effective way, which unfortunately means excluding the Cycladic Islands because they can be a bit more expensive, but oh, are they worth it if you can do it? And so from there, we are going to Naxos, which, if you haven't caught it by now, is my favorite island to visit. I love Naxos. I mean, one, I got my cat from Naxos, but two, I love Naxos long before I also then brought my cat back from there. I took my mom to Naxos and she fell in love with it so much that when she went home, she happened to be adopting a dog shortly after, and guess what? His name is Naxos. We are crazy. We're going to Naxos, and from Naxos, we're not only just enjoying that incredible island and touring all around it. Oh my god, I love Naxos, but also going up to Delos. That is huge. So Delos is the island. It's just off of Mykonos, and thankfully we don't get to go to Mykonos because Mykonos it's too much in so many ways. But from Naxos, we're doing a day trip to Delos. Delos is that little island sacred to Apollo right off Mykonos. But what makes it so special today is that there are no inhabitants on this island. It's quite small. It, in the ancient world, was not only sacred to Apollo, but it was like this cultural hub for a very long time. And now it is just ruins. It is the most incredible, sprawling ruins. Like, I swear I had like a divine experience when I first visited Delos. It is utterly incredible, and I cannot wait to share it all with you. I could talk about it forever, but I'm going to try to stop myself because I'm trying to not make this the whole episode just talking about this trip. And so yes, we do Naxos and then this day trip to Delos, and then from Naxos we go to Santorini. Wild. Again, there's a lot of things that I will never be able to put together in a trip that I handle myself, and this is one of them. So again, if you can afford to join me on this one, honestly, it's going to be really great. The other tours are incredible. I don't want to bring them down, but this one, like I said, it's worth the money. And so I'm really excited to be able to do this and for everyone that gets to join me on this, because on Santorini, we're not doing the typical, there will be some touristy stuff. You get to see how stunning Santorini is because it is absolutely one of a kind, because it is this caldera, right? Like, it is a blown out volcano. And so the just landscape of Santorini, utterly unforgettable, one of a kind. But what is really, 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 really one of a kind, and the most important thing that we will be doing on Santorini, is Akrotiri. This trip to Santorini will include a tour of Akrotiri, which is the Bronze Age town preserved by the volcano in the 16th century BCE. That is a city that is almost 4,000 years old, which you can see. And oh my god, the museum from Akrotiri, it's in Thera. We will be going there too, and it has the wall paintings from Akrotiri. And when I tell you that 4,000-year-old wall paintings can blow your mind into smithereens, I am not lying. I think about this place all of the time. I am so excited to get to go back. I did that once years ago, really only because it was my mom's dream. But otherwise, like, Santorini is expensive and it's really busy. And so really, unless I get brought there to do a tour of Akrotiri and the Thera Archaeological Museum, I'm not going to go. And so you could be with me when I go next because, oh my god, somebody's handling it for me. I'm so excited. From there, we then go down to Crete and we do a whole little tour of Crete with Knossos, obviously. Knossos is, I mean, it's the Palace of Knossos. Did Arthur Evans kind of ruin it forever by recreating things a little bit out of his own mind? Maybe. Still. Oh, Knossos. So we will be able to wander the Palace of Knossos where Theseus defeated the Minotaur. JK, where Ariadne saved him and where she was princess, and we don't really care about Theseus. We will see this Palace of Knossos, but also Gortyn, which is another ancient city that I have never even been to on Crete, and Rethymno, which is a beautiful little town on Crete that I only really drove through one time with Jen and Jenny, so I can't wait to go back. And from there, everyone returns home. And so this trip, like I said, starts in Athens, ends in Crete, does my favorite island of Naxos in between and Santorini, where we will get access to a Bronze Age city preserved by a volcano. My heart is exploding out of my chest. That is the group trip that will be happening. It is from May 15th. This is me scrolling while I'm talking. May 14th to the 25th, 2026. We are sooner, really, than I keep realizing. And so it is about time I'm finally telling you all of this. It is so exciting. Now, the rates are starting at $6,690 per person. That's based on double occupancy. I don't have more information than that because all of this stuff is well beyond my brain capacity. So I'll just tell you that that is the base price, and you can find so much more information as well as the number or email to call if you have more questions or if you want to jump on this and put a deposit down. All of that is available at the website that I've mentioned and which will be linked in the episode's description. I really hope to see some of you joining me on this trip because 1, we can only go if at least 12 people sign up, and 2, I am so excited because Naxos with listeners, I can tell you guys where I got my kitten. He was crazy. His name's Anchovy. Gavados means little fish in Greek. Anyway, I love Naxos. I hope you'll join me. And check out the new website while you're at it. I'll talk about that a little bit more. But first, I'm going to answer another of your questions. Okay, this question is from Jen, who is asking a question about my last Q&A, so it's kind of perfect. Jen says, in the podcast episode from July 29th, Othering in the Odyssey, you briefly mentioned that Odysseus and co. sack a city, kill all the men, and take all the women. I'm wondering what actually happened to the women, as they don't seem to be mentioned ever again. Were they loaded onto the ships as slaves and killed alongside their enslavers? Were they taken, aka raped, and left behind because who wants a bunch of women with morning sickness on a tiny boat full of smelly men? It's just terrible, but you're so right. Were they kidnapped and ransomed back Viking style? Am I missing something else? Oh, Jen, my friend, you're not missing anything. Yeah. So the super cool answer to this is like okay, truly. Okay, so yes, the first stop on Odysseus's journey after Troy is they go to the land of the Cicones. Now, when you're reading the Odyssey, and I think when it's presented in a lot of like pop culture ways, or particularly like in kids' books, I've learned from doing this research, the Cacones are kind of treated as this like non-human race almost, or like they're just, I don't know, they're kind of lumped in alongside these groups that are much more like supernatural and monstrous. But the Cacones are literally just a tribe, I believe, or just like a group of Thracians. So they're literally just like a Thracian people, aka from the north, just like, I mean, it's literally the southern coast of southeastern coast of Greece, like right by modern Turkey, because Troy is like just south of there in modern Turkey. And so it's modern Greece now, ancient world Thrace, and the Thracians were really often considered this like quite warlike, like just like angry, like less quote unquote civilized than the Greeks, you know, group of people. But specifically the Cacones were just allies of Troy, and that's why Odysseus goes up, and it's literally like 2 paragraphs. It's so bad. It's like, the first place we went was the Cacones, and we sacked their city and killed all the men and enslaved all the women. And then it's like, oh, I wanted to head on our way, but my men wanted to sit and relax and eat for a bit. And in that time, the Cacones were able to bring in reinforcements, and then thankfully after that, the Odysseus and his men kind of get their asses kicked and have to like race back to their ships and sail away. And when I say that sacked the city, killed all the men, and took all the women is literally all we have, I'm not lying. Like, we know that they take these women onto their ship as slaves in some way, and then they are, quite literally, never mentioned again. Ever. So yeah, I mean, yes and no to all of your suggestions. Like, I think that the only assumption we can make is that, yeah, like then the women are just like being held on these ships throughout the journey until the Lystragonians, which are a few stops down the line, and that's where all but one ship are destroyed and everyone dies. So I think we just get to assume that the women died on the ships, but they're literally never mentioned again, which says a lot of really great things about how women were seen in the ancient world. Utterly goddamn delightful. Okay. I got one more question and then one more little announcement. This is from Nigel, who's also following up on the Q&A part 3, which I think might be the same episode, similar if not. Nigel says, the discussion about cultural gods and story gods makes me wonder, are both those gods even the same kind of people at all? If one is venerating Athena, is that the same as enjoying the stories? Are the Potnia and figures like Hestia just completely different beings entirely? If you sacrifice to Apollo so that he might do something in return, are you telling stories about the same Apollo? They seem so different. I wonder what your further takes are on these questions. I really love this question, Nigel, because this is something I think about all the time, and also something that I think like is kind of impossible for us to understand. And like all things, this is all coming from my knowledge of the mythology overall. I am unfortunately a little bit less well-versed in the very real way that humans interacted with their gods, aside from the stuff that I've taken in over these many years, which is enough, I'll tell you. But I definitely take it as like, not necessarily that these are different gods, but just that like, I mean, I think it comes down to what I say so often, which is just this question of like, what does it serve, right? What purpose does the story serve, or what purpose does this kind of worship, veneration serve? Because I think that is essentially how we can answer the other question, right? Like, I think these are and are not the same gods. I think, you know, it's in the same way. Okay, this is going to be like kind of a wild and like unfortunate comparison, but like think about the way that Christianity exists now, right? As compared to 2,000 years ago, or rather, I guess, I don't know, 1,600 years ago, whenever the Romans decided they were going to take that on. Because, like, I think that this question and the answers would vary so completely based on where you are, who you are, and what you want from the gods, right? Like, the thing about the stories, firstly, the only true, like, quote unquote stories that we can say with absolute certainty existed in the ancient world, or rather, like, existed for the ancient Greeks at the height of, like, Olympian worship to interact with. Like, it's so hard to even phrase, right? Because, like, so the Odyssey and the Iliad definitely, absolutely existed, and the ancient Greeks broadly would have interacted with them in some way. I think it's safe to say that if you were a Greek-speaking person in the ancient world, you had interacted with the Homeric epics in some way. And so we can say that those stories definitely existed. And so I think that the gods in those stories are probably the truest version of a god to a real person in the very ancient, like, archaic period, let's say, Greece. Like, because those stories and those gods, as they appear in the Odyssey and the Iliad, did exist for the archaic people. But most other things come from a lot later, right? Like, most of the story details, or, like, the beats of most of the most famous Greek myths are coming from things like Apollodorus, they're coming from Ovid, they're coming from these later sources that are almost certainly working with earlier sources, but which we don't have, right? So, like, Pseudo-Apollodorus is the go-to for all of these things. Like, I would say if you're just, like, picking up a book of just, like, a breadth of Greek myths, like, 9 times out of 10, most of it's coming from Pseudo-Apollodorus, who conveniently, like, retold us all of these myths in, like, one form that survived. But he was writing in, like, the 1st century CE, maybe the 1st century BC, very, very late in the wider Greek world. And so while we have those things, like, we cannot say for certain that the people of broad, ancient, archaic Greece knew all of those stories, or, like, interacted with them at all, right? And so I think that the gods that they worshipped are likely very different from the stories that we have. Like, very different. Maybe not always, and maybe in some cases they were more similar, but by and large, I think that the gods that the everyday person would interact with would be conceptualized quite differently from the stories as we have them. But at the same time, I think, like, the everyday person is also probably interacting with these gods in, like, a very different way than like, a noble person or a priest or all of these things, right? Like, I think it's so hard to fully conceptualize the way that these gods and these stories function in the ancient world, because we will just never be able to understand it, right? Everything we know about them is formed, viewed, analyzed, all of it under the lens or through the lens of, like, a post-Christian world, like a world where even if you were, like, not a Christian, everything is still influenced by that Christianity, right? Like, there was also this period for, like, hundreds of years where people weren't really translating ancient Greek, and so everything was coming through Latin, and that's why the Latin names became, like, so much more popular. And that Latin was, like, the language of the church, so it held on as a language, like, a lot longer. But, like, there was also a long time when even the people who were then, you know, over the last few hundred years were interacting with Greek myths and trying to understand them, like, they were still all coming through this Christian lens in one way or another. So we just, like, there's kind of no way to just really conceptualize what was going on. But I do think that, yeah, like, these gods that were, like, the everyday gods being interacted with are very different. I think that using Hestia is a really good example, because Hestia in herself, like, I believe Hestia is a goddess that was just so important in your day-to-day life that, like, she's not in the stories, not because she wasn't important, but because she was, like, too important for a story about some drama, or she was just, like, always at present. She was this, like, very ever-present being, and so, like, why would you put her in stories when she's, like, in your house with you every day, you know? And I think naming Potnia is really interesting too. Now, Potnia, I have not talked about a lot, but there's sort of, like, a general goddesses, typically, like, originally from like a more of a Bronze Age period. Like Potnia means kind of like lady, like mistress kind of thing. And so there's, for instance, one of the most famous is like the Potnia of the wild animals. There's a better phrase. There's like a famous phrase that I'm losing, but the lady of wild animals or things like that. And you know, ostensibly that could be Artemis, but it's also just this like concept goddess from like an earlier time, right? And so I think Potnia are probably, and Hestia are like these really good examples of what I think probably most gods were conceptualized as to like the everyday person, but those gods also featured in stories where they might not resemble the god that you are feeling like you're connecting with on a day-to-day basis, but they're still, that is that god, you know? I just, yeah, we it's so hard to conceptualize. Like I feel like I could talk about this forever, but I've already rambled about it. But I just think, yes, these are different gods. I think that it's really important that we learn to kind of separate the stories from the gods in the religious context, because, you know, in the same way that the Bible is full of myths, because it is, we also, or Christians, myself not being one of them, baptized Catholic though, going to heaven, but no, like the way that like the Bible is full of mythology, like the Bible is mythology, but it is also, you know, it also forms how people interact with Jesus, God. I don't know who you regularly interact with. Both? Together? I don't care. But yeah, like, you know, it is both things. It is a book of stories, a book of myths, and a means of interacting or understanding how to then interact with these gods. And so I think, yeah, like it is just important to remember that these are stories, but they're also not. And especially when it comes to like the plays and stuff, like those are stories. That's like, this is a terrible example. I'm full of them right now. Like the plays are like the Passion of the Christ movie, you know? Like fanfic about Jesus, but the plays are like that about the Greek gods. And so if you're thinking about something from a play, you have to really separate it from the god, because the play was going to be about artistic license and creativity. But often that's the only story we have, right? So it's just these things are always sort of interacting with each other, like clashing, that we're always going to have to navigate these questions of like a story versus a god versus like a cultural feeling, a cultural interaction. These are always going to be really different things, and I think it's just important to remember that, because it adds so much to remember that these stories, these gods, all of it just contains kind of an entire cultural identity in this form. I hope that made sense. My brain is also slowly turning to smush as the more I work on so many different projects all at once. But I really loved these questions, and I really love talking about all of this. And already, I mean, I'm seeing so many more questions. I'm trying not to just do Q&As while I'm working on this book, but also like you guys have really great questions, and I'm so excited by how many are coming in lately, and I'm just so thrilled. I realize I didn't do any voice notes this time, but remember, if you want to leave a voice note for a future Q&A episode, please do, or just a question. Both of those options are linked in the episode's descriptions. You can submit a question either in text or voice note. Either way, I will be so thrilled. But I'm going to end today's episode with, I'm sorry, this question is from Serena, who adds in a lot of really interesting stuff, but that I'm going to sort of take in internally and not share on the show, because it's mostly just information about what things I should listen to and or people to be on the show, which I love. So thank you. But Serena added in a question at the end. I do have a question unrelated to that. I've seen some pics of the tote bags from the trip to Greece, and I think you mentioned pins, and wondered if this merch is restricted to patrons or if you'll make it available from your website. Oh, Serena, you asked the age-old question. The age-old question. Okay, so here's the deal. Last year, I decided that I was going to start handling merch on my own. I spent a ton of money getting new merch designed, getting these beautiful illustrations by the incredible Angel Incarnate. You've seen a lot of them. The Euripides logo that we did for the series last year, that really intricately designed, stunning piece, and the simpler version, all of that being the Euripides fan club, which I'm obsessed with. We have this incredible piece called the Chthonic Cuties, which was inspired by Michaela, and that is Persephone, Hecate, and Cerberus hanging out in this like stunning I'm gonna forget the style that it's in, Art Deco. It's in Art Deco. That's what it is. It's stunning. We have that. We have, yes, the tote bag that you saw from the group trips. That was meant to be limited. I'm gonna kind of see, I do have a few of them though still, and that's with this beautiful illustration of the Oracle. And then I have the incredible new logo. And so yes, actually, over the past year, I spent a fuck ton of money having all of that stuff made. So I have pins of Euripides fan club and of the logo. I have, like I said, a couple tote bags from the group trip that were limited, but I have a handful of them left. And then I have tote bags featuring the new logo and again featuring the Euripides design. And then I have stickers of all of those designs that I mentioned. They are not restricted to Patreon. The issue is just the world at large. And so I made this plan last year. Like I said, I spent a ton of money having this merch produced and the designs. I'm working with a friend to build out this website. She's doing it. She and her business partner are doing it for free because they're also building their own business and need it. And we sort of were all just kind of teaming up to do what we can to help each other because nobody has any money right now. And essentially, due to, I literally cannot begin to explain how many extenuating life tragedy circumstances, due to so many of those things, the creation of the website and the store to sell the merch took a year. And like I said, it should be out today. The merch is just a few days out, because we have to do some more back end things. But the new website is there, and the merch will in theory be available within like a week or two. But in the time since I spent all of this money that I spent before the show started making like less than half of what we used to because of the United States and their horrors. They also, speaking of the United States and their horrors, they changed how anyone can ship anything to the States, which is where 50% of my listenership is. So I do have merch, and the store is going to be launching in a week or two, but I am still trying to figure out whether or not I can actually ship anything to the US there with the tariffs as they are and the getting rid of the de minimis exemption, which meant that smaller items could go through without customs. That's all gone now. And the entire world is now grappling with trying to figure out how to ship stuff to the States. So I don't actually know for sure that I can. But for the rest of you, I'm going to have merch, and I'm really, I really need to get it. I'm really hoping to be able to ship to the States too. Right now I'm sitting on so much, and so much money that I need to make back because the ads are not the same. And we're doing okay. We're doing okay. But all to say, yes, we should have merch. I wish I knew. But we also do have patron-specific merch that is a gift, and so it's customs free. So, very specifically, if you want to become a patron, we do have patron exclusive stickers that go out. Those are the Oracle edition stickers, which are like the trippy hallucinogenic version of the logo. They're holographic. Those are fun. And the podcast logo pin does go out to certain tiers as well. Those come with just being a patron and no customs. So if you feel like signing up for ad-free and bonus episodes and all of those goodies, check out patreon.com/mythsbaby. The link is in the episode's description. As for merch itself, like I said, the website should be launching, and we hope to have the shop up within a week, max next week. We just have to figure out what the living fuck we're gonna do when it comes to shipping to the States. Either way, you guys are gonna have to pay customs, so I'm sorry. Maybe I really hope you'll still buy things, but I also wouldn't blame you if you didn't. So, fuck Donald Trump. Fuck fascists, and end the genocide in Palestine. And that's about enough for today, I think. Let's Talk About Myths, Baby is written and produced by me, Liv Albert. Michaela Pankowish is the Hermes to my Olympians, my incredible producer. The podcast is part of the Memory Collective podcast network. A big thing about getting this new website is that the Memory Collective will have its own dedicated website, and hopefully we will actually be able to start planning things. In the meantime, be on the lookout, because we're doing something big for International Podcast Day along with everyone else in the Memory Collective, so stay tuned for that. The newsletter should also exist now that the website exists, so if you're already signed up, you should be getting one later this week, early next, latest. Or if you want to get in on this, which is where you will find more information about the group trip and the merch when we have it, and whatever else that I can't jam into this rambly nonsense, mythsbaby.com/newsletter. I am Liv, and I love this shit, and thank you so much for listening to me try to explain all of this stuff and for answering your questions. This is not the type of thing that I would love to just like ramble at you, but I kept trying to think of a better way of doing it, and nothing was happening because of the workload. So rambling it is. Now you know, stay tuned for more. We're gonna get through this. If you want to help the show keep going, because at this point I am not as sure as I would like to be that we will be able to keep going, consider joining the Patreon. That would mean the world to me. I'll say it again because I don't know how to end it otherwise. I am Liv, and I love this shit.